I, 34 male, am the kind of guy who gets described as annoyingly rational by people who know me well. I fix things on weekends, meal prep on Sundays, keep my apartment clean. Not dramatic. Not impulsive. Which is exactly why what happened hits so hard, because when someone uses your calm nature as a weapon against you, it cuts different than anything else. My girlfriend and I had been together 3 years. Met through mutual friends, moved in together after 18 months. Saturday farmers markets, splitting the grocery bill, watching the same shows. Looked solid from the outside, mostly felt solid from the inside. Except for one thing we had never fully resolved. Kids. I knew where I stood. Had known since my late 20s. I didn't want children. Not a trauma response, not a phase. A clear, considered, deeply personal decision I had made about my own life. I told her this early. Not once. Multiple times. Her response was always some version of, "I'm not sure what I want yet," or, "Let's just see where things go." I took that at face value. That was my first mistake. I should have pushed harder for a real answer. I should have said, "Look, we need to be on the same page about this or we're wasting each other's time." But I didn't. I told myself we had time. I told myself it would come up naturally when it needed to. It came up all right. It was a Tuesday night, nothing special about it. She came home from a weekend trip visiting her sister, dropped her bag by the door, and said it so casually I almost didn't register the words. "Oh, by the way, I told my sister and her friends that we're trying for a baby." I looked up from the couch. "You told them what?" "That we're trying." She shrugged like she'd said she told them we got a new coffee maker. It just came up. They were all talking about their kids, and I felt left out, so I said we were trying. I put the remote down. "We're not trying." "I know that, obviously. But I already said it, so." "So what?" She turned to face me fully, then, and I saw something shift in her expression. Not guilt. Something closer to calculation. "So now I look like a liar if nothing happens. Everyone's going to be asking questions." "That's not my problem. You made that up without talking to me. It's not a big deal. We've been together 3 years. It's not crazy for people to assume. I told you I don't want kids. Multiple times. You know exactly where I stand." She went quiet. Then she said something I will never forget. "Well, I told everyone. So now we kind of have to, or I look like a liar." I stared at her. "You made a commitment. Not me." She picked her bag back up and went to the bedroom. And I sat there on that couch, realizing this was not the first time she had done something like this. It was just the first time it was this obvious. Because there had been smaller moments before this. Times she told her friends we were definitely getting engaged soon without discussing it with me. Times she'd made plans for both of us without asking and then acted wounded when I pushed back. Times she described our future to other people in ways that didn't match anything we'd actually agreed to. I'd always let it go. Called it harmless. Called it enthusiasm. This was not harmless. Over the next few days, she tried a softer approach. Came to me almost apologetic, framing the whole thing as a personal breakthrough. I just got excited. I think I want this more than I realized. Like the lie she'd told her sister had unlocked some deep truth about herself. Maybe it had. But that truth had nothing to do with what I wanted, and that part didn't seem to concern her at all. "I love you," she said one evening at the kitchen table. "Don't you think you could change your mind? For us. I've been consistent about this since before we moved in together. People change. I haven't changed. I've been saying the same thing for 3 years." She leaned back, and I could see her recalibrating. "So you're just never going to budge? That's incredibly selfish. Wanting a child I don't want would be more selfish." She didn't have an answer for that. What came next was where it started getting uglier. She called her mother. I know this because her mother called me 2 days later, something that had never happened in 3 years of dating. The conversation was framed as concern. "She's just so upset. She loves you so much. Don't you think you owe it to her to at least consider it?" I said, "This is between her and me." Her mother said, "She's not getting any younger." I said, "I understand that. And that's exactly why she deserves someone who wants the same thing she wants. That's not me.
Pause.
Then, you're being very cold about this. I ended the call. 2 days after that, 2 of her friends reached out to me separately, both framing their messages as check-ins, but both nudging me toward keeping an open mind. She had recruited people. She was running a campaign. And every time I didn't fold, the pressure escalated slightly, like she was turning up a dial, testing how much force it would take. Then came the dinner. She invited her sister and her sister's husband over without telling me the real agenda. I thought it was a regular dinner. I cooked, poured drinks. We sat down, and within 15 minutes her sister's husband looked at me and said, "So man, you nervous? First kid's a big deal, but you get used to it." I set my fork down, looked at her across the table. She didn't meet my eyes. "We're not expecting," I said clearly. Dead silence. Her sister looked confused. "But she said you guys were actively trying?"
No.
"We're not." The dinner fell apart from there. Her sister pulled her into the kitchen. I sat with her brother-in-law, who to his credit just refilled his drink and said nothing. When she came back, her eyes were red, and she said quietly, "Can we not do this right now?" "You brought them here," I said. "Not me." That night was the first time the conversation became fully honest. She dropped the soft framing entirely. "I want a baby. I want one with you. And I don't understand why you get to just shut that down completely. Because it's my body and my life. The same way you have the right to want children, I have the right not to want them. Those two things are incompatible. That's not cruelty. That's reality. You've had 3 years to tell me this wasn't going anywhere. I told you on our 4th date. I told you when we talked about moving in together. I told you last year when your cousin got pregnant and you said you felt envious. I have been consistent." She shook her head. "I thought you'd come around. That's not something I ever told you. I just assumed. You assumed. And then instead of talking to me about it, you told people we were trying. You brought your mother in. You had your friends message me. You staged a dinner. And now I'm supposed to feel guilty." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "If you really loved me, you want to give me this." That was it. That sentence was the end of it for me. Not because it was the worst thing she'd said, but because it revealed the entire logic she was operating from. My love was supposed to override my autonomy. My feelings were a variable she could negotiate around. Hers were a fixed point everything else had to adjust to. "I do love you," I said. "But I'm ending the relationship." She did not take that calmly. The next 2 weeks were chaos. She cycled through every emotional register. Crying, anger, bargaining. Told me I was throwing away something real over a hypothetical. Told me I was selfish, immature, afraid of commitment. Told me I'd regret it when I was old and alone. None of it moved me. Then I found out through a mutual friend who texted asking if it was true that I had cheated. I hadn't cheated. Hadn't even come close. She had started a narrative before I had said a word to anyone. In her version, I ended things suddenly and without reason. In some versions, she was apparently telling people I had promised her a family and backed out. In others, I had changed my mind about kids at the last minute, as if this was some recent development I'd sprung on her out of nowhere. She was rewriting history in real time and doing it fast before I had a chance to say anything. I didn't panic. I documented. Went back through 3 years of texts. Screenshots of every conversation where I had clearly stated I didn't want children. Screenshots of her responses. Screenshots of her saying things like, "I respect that. I'm just not sure what I want yet." Organized everything. Saved it all. Said nothing publicly. And then I did something she did not see coming. I scheduled a vasectomy. I want to be clear about the timeline here, because it matters. This was not a revenge move. I had been considering this procedure for over a year. I had done the research. I had one prior consultation already. The breakup didn't create the decision. It removed the last reason I had been hesitant to move forward, which was a vague concern about how she would react. That concern was now irrelevant. I had the procedure done. Recovery was smooth. I told exactly 2 people, my brother and my best friend. 3 weeks later, word got back to her somehow.
I still don't know how.
But she found out, and her response was volcanic. She called me screaming, "You did that on purpose. You did that to spite me." "I did it for myself. You're insane. You are genuinely insane. Do you know how that makes me look?" And there it was. Not concern for me. Not even real anger about the relationship being over. She was upset about how it looked. She had been telling people we broke up because I changed my mind about kids, and now there was permanent physical evidence that I had not changed my mind at all, that I had in fact been exactly who I said I was the entire time. Her narrative fell apart on contact with reality. But she wasn't done. She made one more move, and it was the one that pushed me from absorbing hits to returning them deliberately. She called my mother. She had my mother's number from a family birthday dinner 2 years prior, had apparently saved it and used it. Told my mother I had manipulated her for 3 years, that I had led her on, that she was devastated. Painted herself as the victim of a long con. My mother called me, not to take sides, but because she was blindsided. She seems really upset. "Did you know she wanted children?" "Yes," I said. "And she knew I didn't. I have the text going back 3 years. Silence. Then, "Oh, I'll send them to you if you want."
No.
"I believe you." That was enough for my mother. But the fact that she had reached out to my family, crossed that line, used a relationship that had nothing to do with our breakup as a tool, that was the moment I decided this was not something I was going to let quietly settle. I sent a single message to our main mutual friend group. Not a wall of text, not an emotional breakdown. Just this: "I've seen some things being said about why we broke up. I have documentation of every conversation where I clearly stated I didn't want children, going back to the beginning of our relationship. I'm not going to post it publicly, but I want it known that it exists, and I'm happy to share it with anyone who has questions." That's it. That's all I sent. 3 people from that group reached out to me privately within 24 hours. Apparently, she had been telling a version of events so dramatically different from reality that even people who liked her were feeling uncomfortable. One friend told me she had claimed I was talking about baby names with her last year. Another said she had told people I picked out a neighborhood where we were going to raise a family. Neither of those things had ever happened. I sent each of them the relevant screenshots. Not everything, just the specific parts that address the specific lies. Clear, time-stamped, in her own words. The group got quiet after that. The kind of quiet that happens when people are reassessing something they thought they understood. She found out I had shared the screenshots and texted me a paragraph that was equal parts fury and wounded pride, calling me vindictive, saying I was destroying her reputation, telling me I owed her the dignity of not sharing private conversations. I texted back once. "You called my mother. You told people I cheated. You told people I promised you a family. I shared private conversations because you made public accusations. Those things are connected." She didn't respond to that. Then she contacted my employer. Not my direct manager. She found someone in HR through LinkedIn and sent them a message implying I had engaged in emotional manipulation and deceptive behavior in a personal relationship and suggesting they might want to be aware of the kind of person they employed. I found out because the HR person, to their enormous credit, forwarded the message to my manager with a note saying this did not appear to be a workplace matter and they would not be acting on it, but wanted him to be aware. My manager called me into his office, closed the door, and said, "I'm not going to make this a thing. But I want you to know this happened, and I want you to know we're not taking it seriously. You okay?" I told him I was fine, thanked him, walked back to my desk, and sat there for 10 minutes thinking she just tried to get me fired. Over a breakup. Over me refusing to have children I never wanted. Over me being exactly who I told her I was from the beginning. I called a lawyer that afternoon. He reviewed everything I brought. The texts, the screenshots, the HR forwarded message, the documented outreach to my family. His assessment was clear. The HR contact could potentially constitute harassment depending on impact, but since my employer took no action and I suffered no professional consequences, a civil suit would be an uphill battle financially. More usefully, if she continued this behavior, I had strong grounds for a cease and desist letter. And the defamation exposure on her end was real. I had documented proof she had told people things about me that were factually false. A formal letter calling that out would, in his experience, stop this kind of behavior faster than almost anything else. I authorized the letter. It went out on a Thursday. Formal, precise, and surgical. It outlined point by point the false statements she had made to third parties. It referenced the HR contact specifically. It stated clearly that if she continued making false statements about me to any individual in any format, we would pursue all available legal remedies, including a defamation claim. Certified mail. Lawyer's name on the signature line. I know the moment she received it, because a mutual friend texted me that afternoon and said simply, "She's really upset right now." What did you do? I sent her a letter. What kind of letter? The kind with the lawyer's name on it.
Pause.
Okay then. The false narrative stopped. Not gradually. Immediately. No more posts hinting at my supposed betrayal. No more messages to mutual friends. No more contact with my family. Nothing. I thought it was over. Then, about 6 months after the breakup, my brother saw something on her social media and called me. She had written a long post, not naming me directly, but describing a relationship with a man who had wasted her best years, who had pretended to want a future with her, who had secretly gotten a procedure done to ensure she could never have what she wanted. Framed as a healing journey, a survival story, described in enough detail that anyone who knew us both would know exactly who she was talking about. The post had dozens of comments. Her sister left broken heart emojis. Her mother wrote about being proud of her strength. I read the whole thing once. Then I called my lawyer. This time the conversation was different because this time she had put it in writing, publicly, on a platform with her name attached to it. My lawyer reviewed the post the same day. His assessment was direct. This is actionable. She's made specific false factual claims in a public forum. The implication that you concealed a medical procedure to deprive her of children is demonstrably false given your documented communication history. The implication that you misrepresented your intentions is directly contradicted by years of time-stamped texts. We send a demand letter requiring the post come down within 48 hours and a public correction be posted. If she refuses, we file. Send it, I said. The letter went out the next morning. 48-hour deadline. Take the post down. Post a correction acknowledging the prior post contained inaccurate characterizations. Preserve all communications related to the matter. She did not take the post down within 48 hours. She posted about the letter instead. A shorter post, more agitated, saying she was being legally threatened for telling her truth and that I was trying to silence her. That second post stayed up for about 4 hours before it came down. I don't know exactly what happened in those 4 hours. What I know is that her own lawyer, who she apparently contacted after receiving my demand letter, reviewed my documentation and advised her in plain terms that she was exposed, that the evidence against her narrative was overwhelming, and that continuing to post publicly was making her situation significantly worse. Both posts came down by the end of that day. The correction she posted was brief and clearly written with legal guidance. It said the prior post had contained characterizations that did not fully reflect the circumstances of the relationship and that she was removing it out of respect for everyone involved. Not a full accounting, not an apology, but a public retraction, attached to her name, visible to everyone who had seen the original. That was enough. I did not file suit. My lawyer and I discussed it, and the honest assessment was that while the case was strong, the financial recovery absent documented professional or financial harm would likely be modest, and the process would keep me tied to this situation for over a year. What I had already gotten was more valuable than a damages award. A retraction on the record. Her lawyer's implicit acknowledgement through her client's behavior that my documentation was airtight. Every false narrative she had built collapsed in sequence. That was the resolution. Not dramatic, not cinematic, but complete. She moved out, found a place closer to her sister. From what I hear, she is doing okay and seeing someone new. I genuinely hope that works out for her. I hope she finds someone who wants exactly what she wants. That person exists. It was just never me. I am 34. I know exactly who I am. I have the paperwork to prove I meant every word I ever said. My body, my choice, my life. Nobody gets to rewrite that with social pressure, recruited family members, staged dinners, calls to my employer, or public posts designed to make strangers angry on her behalf. I held the line. The line held. If this story hit different, go ahead and subscribe, because if I protected my future this hard, the least you can do is protect my notification bell.